Hi, this is Eric from Cafe Watercolor and welcome to another painting demo, and let's just jump into it. So I haven't done a portrait for quite a while, so it's great to jump back into it in this channel. I always love doing portrait, I just haven't do a lot of live streaming with portrait because portrait is, to me, is a lot harder than landscape, and especially the drawing stage. Sometimes I will draw portrait and I'll erase and I'll fix something because the portion is off, because the alignment is a little bit off, and things like that. So it took quite a while for me to do a drawing. So even though this is sped up, I actually spend quite a bit of time doing the drawing, maybe half an hour or so, or maybe even a little bit more. I'm not quite sure. But head drawing works as its own course, so I'm not gonna talk too much about head drawing. But what I can say is that before your first wash, your drawing is very important, and you need to spend a little bit more time to do your drawing than if you're doing a scenery painting. You want to get the structure of the face right, the features, the proportion, and the alignment. All of that are all very important in a portrait painting. So really make sure you have a solid drawing before you start to lay down your first wash. So what I do is I draw very loosely first, and then when I'm roughly blocking the position and the structure of the face, I start to draw a little bit darker and indicate the landmarks on the face. So places like the corner of the eyes, the corner of the mouth, the structure, the bottom of the nose, and the chin, and places like that. So after I get the landmark in, I will be able to erase all the light and loose lines that I have underneath. So only the darker lines and darker marks remain. That will be easier and cleaner for me to do a painting on top. So this girl's name is Anna. I know her through Instagram. She's a very beautiful Ukrainian girl. And when I saw this photo, I saw it would be very nice for painting. It's very suitable, the lighting is nice, and there's not a lot of high contrast in the photo. So that means I can keep most of my colors transparent and light, which is great. So after some final check, some measurement, and a little bit of final adjustment, I am going to start my first wash. So I have a separate palette for my portrait. Even though the colors are mostly the same, I just like to keep it different. I have a portrait palette and I have a landscape palette. So here you can see I work out a warm pile and a cool pile. I pre-mix those colors so I can use them very easily without go back and remix, because the first wash is very important. You want to keep a nice, clean, consistent wash. So I start from the nose and outward. So the nose is usually a little bit redder, a little bit warmer, and as it goes away from the nose, I start to make it a little bit more towards the yellow, and then eventually to the cool color using cerulean blue. So it's very important that I keep this first wash clean. So I don't want any hard edges right now, and just paint over everything, even the eyes. I find this way a little bit easier. If you try to leave the eye white, first it can look too light, and second it can be harder to keep your wash consistently clean. So now I get the full coverage on the face, and on the side around the hair area I start to give it a little bit more cool color. And you can definitely paint out into the hair, because the hair is usually going to be darker, so you can paint the skin color out into the hair and you can cover that later on. It's very important to keep the face a nice clean wash. So as I paint the first wash, you can already see that it's drying a lot lighter. I put in a little bit of blue on her eyes, wet onto wet, and I'll just use a bigger brush and just paint her shirt as well. Her shirt is blue, so I'll just use some cerulean blue. And I start to give a little bit of basic tone on her hair already. Now finishing up the first wash. And it's very important you just get the color away and just get that into the paper. A complete white paper can be very daunting, so it's important that you get some color on it. As long as you keep it clean, it will be fine. If you wonder what color I use for the skin tone, I have another video that talks about how to mix skin tone. But basically I use cadmium red and cadmium orange for my basic skin tone. If I want it to be a little bit more yellow, I add a little bit of cadmium yellow. If I want to be a little bit cooler, then I will use cerulean blue. So the second wash, I start from the eyes. You can see that my mixture is still quite wet. You can see the shine and you can see the slight bead gathering there. It's just that I'm being really careful. I'm using the tip of my brush. This is a Da Vinci Kolinsky brush. I've been using it for quite a while and I'm still using it. So right now you see that I paint her upper eyelid and I expand that shape out and connect to the shadow of her eye socket. And then I extend that with a little bit cooler color to the side plane of her eyelid. And I'll soften the edge a little bit with a clean, almost dry brush, so that some part of the edges will be softened. So here you can see, even though I approach portrait and landscape quite differently, it's still very important that I connect shape. And one of the problems I see a lot of students make is that they try to paint eyes and nose and mouth individually. They don't try to have them connected with other shapes on the face. But if you don't connect them, they feel like they're separated. They're not part of the face. So it's important that when you paint the features like the eye, try to have them connected with other shape. So now I'm painting the lower eyelid and soften the edges. But you do see me leaving some hard edges here and there to suggest structures. So here on the other eye, same thing. I'll paint the upper eyelid and bring that into the iris. And I'll connect shape to the overall eye socket. And then I soften the shape with clean water and almost dry brush. And while it is still wet, I connect to the forehead and just to get that playing in. So the forehead, the shadow is connecting to the eye socket. And then I extend and bring the value down to her cheek and all the way down to the bottom of her lip to the chin. And while it is still wet, I add a little bit of red on her nose just to make her nose project a little bit and start to give some basic form of the nose. So as you can see, it's all about connecting the shape. So I start with the eye, but then I start to expand that shape all the way down to her nose and her chin and her cheek. And it might look a little bit weird right now because the shape is not complete yet. I am still painting other part of her face, so giving her cheekbone a little bit of structure, and now I'm going to paint her lip. After the lip is in, it will look a lot better. But that's the thing about painting portrait for me. There's always this stage of, is it going to look good, because you haven't finished the whole shape just yet. And unlike oil, I cannot just paint the big, dark and light and try to paint the transition tone in between. I have to build up the value from light to dark. So before the contrast is in, there's always this awkward stage that I need to just keep painting and keep believe that this will turn out good. So I bring the value down to her neck. So we have our basic lighting right now. We have our basic sense of light and dark. And after this wash is dry, I will be able to go back in and further model the eye and the nose and the features. But we have established the basic light and the dark and the warm and cool of the skin tone. Now that I'm waiting for the face to dry, I can paint a little bit of the hair. And now is also the good time to separate the face and the hair just a little bit. We can do those a little bit later after it's dry, but some part of the hair and the head, I want them to be connected, especially on her left side of her head where her hair is combed back. There should be a soft transition from her skin tone to her hair. Now I'm just painting the light part of her hair that is resting on her shoulder and her chest. Just get a little bit of those light color in. So I'm not big on the detail when it comes to hair. I treat them as big shape. So as long as you got a little bit of detail hair strength in the edges, you'll be fine. So now onto the third wash. The second wash of the face is dry. Now I can paint an even more intense color to further define and model the features. So starting with the eye again. And again, even though it is different from landscape, but if you really think about it, the process for me is the same. I paint the light value first, and then the middle value on my second wash, and now the third value are the darks. Just that the dark is never really that dark because I want to keep my face bright. But within each layer, I can further expand the range of the value. So now that I start to painting some darker tones, but also I leave out some of the middle value and the light value so it has a transition from light to dark. And as you can see, I don't scrub a lot. I usually paint a shape and paint it out, and if I need to soften some edges, I will use a clean brush and soften it with maybe 1 or 2 strokes, and that's about it. Some hard edges is definitely necessary for face because it shows structure, and if you try to soften everything, the face will end up looking like a mush, and that's not always a good look. The key to a nice looking portrait is the color, the transparency. Instead of trying to soften everything, keep the color and value light and mostly transparent. Like I said in the other videos, when you're painting the dark part of the face, you are just making it a little bit less transparent, a little bit more opaque, instead of trying to really paint something dark. Just take a little bit of transparency away by painting a layer on top, and then you're good to go. Don't emphasize too much on darkness when you are painting, especially a young girl like her. You want to keep most of the shadow still in the middle and light value if possible. So her lips, I paint some darker values at the corner and the center of her lips. Those are the dark areas. And then while it is still wet, I paint lighter values to have them merge into the same shape. So even though her whole lip is one single shape, there's value variation within. And now if you look at how I paint her lips, again, try to paint it as one single shape and leave out some of the lighter part. And now that I start to soften some of the edges. So as you can see, some softening will do the lip good because I want to merge the lip again into the skin tone. If I keep her lips so clear that it looks like she's wearing a lipstick, it's going to jump out too much and it will not look like it belongs to the face. So soften some edges if needed. Don't always try to make the features stand out too much. Now on the side of her nose, I give it a little bit more value. Try to bring out her cheek just a little bit, just to give it a little bit more volume. So as you can see, her face is in good shape now. It has a good value range and nice structure. So now is a good time to start working on the hair. Once the hair is in, a little bit darker value is in, the whole portrait is going to feel a lot more anchored, because we have the complete value range. So we'll darken the hair that's behind her neck, and then we actually bring that dark value out onto her neck, so that will separate her neck and her face just a little bit. So we'll also use this opportunity to define her chin just a little bit more. So I actually really like how this portrait turns out, even though it doesn't look exactly like the photo. It looks a little bit different. However, I do think I capture her essence, because after I finish the painting, I show the painting to her friend and her friend can instantly recognize her. So I guess I wasn't that horrible. So now I need to pay a little bit of attention to her clothes, to her torso area. So just a little bit of dark to suggest the form and the wrinkles and stuff on her shirt. We don't need much, we just need a little bit of suggestions, just so that the painting looks a little bit more finished. So just continue down and start painting the secondary value on her shirt. Give her chest a little bit of definition, just to have a little bit of light and dark. So I soften the edge, so her chest, her breast area looks a little bit more round. But overall is very, very loose. And just like my last video about visual language, here we got some visual language as well. If you see light and dark, hard and soft edge working together, you read it as form and different wrinkles. And in the context of a portrait, you will read that as a clothes and a shirt. A little bit of triangular dark, and you will see that as a color. So you don't need much to show form and structures. So again, always ask yourself, how much detail do you actually need to convey what you see? Now I'm adding a little bit more dark and detail on her hair, just to push the contrast and value a little bit more. Now I'm really darkening the dark side of her hair, so that it just creates a little bit more depth. So now you actually feel the neck is in front of the hair, and then the hair has different layer to it. But again, I keep the hair very, very loose, just a big shape. I actually lose a lot of her right shoulder because I want to focus on her face a little bit, so I try not to paint too much hair there. That will take the attention away. Painting some background to bring out the light on her shoulder. And we have the finished painting. I hope you enjoy this demo and this painting. I certainly really enjoy this and I love how it turns out. If you enjoyed this video, please consider like and subscribe. You can also visit my website at cafewatercolor.com to sign up for my watercolor PDF guide. I'm Eric, and I will see you guys next time.